The moment my son-in-law called me useless, I thought the worst had already happened. I was wrong, because what I discovered that same night, hidden behind a half-closed door, made the shattered teacup on the floor feel like nothing. It wasn't just disrespect. It was betrayal, the kind that turns your own home into a place you no longer recognize. And by the time I walked out of that house, I wasn't just leaving humiliation behind. I was leaving a truth they never wanted me to find out. Welcome to my YouTube channel Olivia Tales, where silence speaks. The tea slipped from my trembling fingers and shattered against the marble floor. Of course, Armand scoffed from the doorway, his voice dripping with contempt. Useless old woman, you can't even hold a cup properly. The words didn't just land, they cut. I stood there, staring at the spreading stain of tea, the shards of porcelain reflecting a distorted version of my face. For a moment I couldn't tell if it was the cup that had broken or something inside me. My daughter, Hera, said nothing. That was the part that hurt the most. I had not always been this woman. Once I was strong, respected, needed. I raised Hera alone after my husband died when she was just 6. I worked 2 jobs, stitched clothes at night, skipped meals so she could eat better. Every sacrifice I made had her name written on it. And when she got married, I believed, foolishly perhaps, that I had finally earned rest. Instead, I became invisible, or worse, a burden. It hadn't started this way. In the beginning, Armand was polite, charming even. He used to call me Amy with a soft smile, ask about my health, insist I sit while he helped with groceries. But slowly, like rust eating away at iron, something changed. The comments began as jokes. Amy, you're getting slow these days. Amy, you forgot again, you're becoming old, huh? Then came irritation. Why can't you remember simple things? Do you have to interfere in everything? And then the insults. Useless. Burden. Old woman. Each word chipped away at my dignity, and Hera, she would just lower her eyes. That morning after the teacup broke, I bent down to clean the mess. Leave it, Armand snapped. You'll just make it worse. I froze mid-motion, something inside me whispered enough, but years of silence held me in place. I said leave it. He barked again, louder this time. Hera finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Mama, I'll do it, you go rest. Rest, that word had become a polite way of saying go away. I stood up slowly, my knees aching, not from age but from everything I had swallowed over the years. As I turned to leave, Armand muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, I don't know why she's still here. That was the moment, not the first insult, not the 100th, but that one, because suddenly I realized something terrifying. He was right. Why was I still here? That night I packed my bag. Not much, just a few clothes, my medicines, and an old photo of Hera as a child, smiling with missing teeth and bright eyes that once looked at me like I was her whole world. I paused at the doorway of my room. For a second I thought of staying, of forgiving, of pretending. But then I remembered the broken teacup and the way my hands had trembled, not from weakness but from humiliation. No, I walked out. Where are you going? Hera asked, startled as she saw my bag. Just leaving, I said quietly. What do you mean leaving? Armand's tone was sharp, suspicious. I looked at both of them, my daughter, my son-in-law, my family, or at least they used to be. I don't want to be a burden anymore, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. Armand let out a dry laugh. Well, that's the most sensible thing you've said. Hera flinched. Armand, no, let her go if she wants, he interrupted. It'll be easier for everyone. Easier. The word echoed in my chest. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. And then I walked out of the house I had helped build without looking back. For the first time in years, the night air felt honest. It didn't judge me, didn't belittle me, it just existed. I took a rickshaw to an old friend's house, Shazia. We hadn't spoken in years, life having pulled us in different directions, but when she opened the door and saw me, she didn't ask questions, she just hugged me and I broke. Days turned into weeks. Shazia insisted I stay. She gave me her spare room, fed me warm meals, and most importantly, she listened, really listened. You stayed too long, she said one evening, not unkindly. I stayed because she's my daughter, I replied. Who are you to yourself? She asked gently. I didn't have an answer. I started helping Shazia with her small home-based tailoring business. At first my hands trembled. My stitches were uneven, but slowly muscle memory returned. Piece by piece I found myself again. Customers came, orders increased, and with each passing day I felt something I hadn't felt in years, useful not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind myself that I still mattered. One afternoon, about a month later, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Hera stood there, her eyes were red. Mama, she whispered. For a moment time stood still, then reality returned. Come in, I said softly. She stepped inside, looking around as if seeing me for the first time. You're working, she asked. She swallowed. Why didn't you tell me where you were? I smiled faintly. Would it have mattered? She looked down, silence filled the room. I'm sorry, she said finally, her voice breaking. The words hit me harder than any insult ever had, not because they were loud but because they were late. I should have said something, I should have stopped him, I didn't want conflict. So you chose silence, I said calmly. She nodded, tears falling. In that silence, I continued, you let me disappear. Before she could respond, another voice came from the doorway. Well, this is where you've been hiding. Armin, he walked in like he owned the place, his eyes scanning everything with thinly veiled judgment. This is your new life, he said with a smirk. Sewing clothes at your age. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I didn't feel small. Working, I said simply. He chuckled. Let's not pretend you left because you couldn't handle a little truth. Hera whispered, Armin, please, but he wasn't done. You think leaving made a difference, you're still the same. Enough, the word came from me, calm, firm, final. He stopped, maybe because it was the first time I had ever interrupted him. You called me useless, I said, my voice steady. He shrugged. If the shoe fits. I raised your wife alone, I continued, cutting him off again. I gave her everything I had, and when I had nothing left I gave her that too, rolled his eyes. Here comes the emotional speech. And you, I said, stepping closer, measured my worth by how perfectly I served you tea. The room went silent. I stayed quiet because I thought respect would come with time, I continued. But I was wrong. I paused, then I said the words that had been building inside me for years. I wasn't useless, Armin, I was tolerant. And you mistook my tolerance for weakness. His smirk faltered just slightly. I left not because I had nowhere to stay, I added. I left because I finally realized I deserve better. Hera was crying openly now. Armin for once had no immediate reply, so I finished it. You didn't lose a burden when I walked out of that house, I said quietly. You lost someone who held it together. That did it. His face changed, not dramatically, but enough. For the first time he looked uncertain. Frozen, they left shortly after. Hera hugged me tightly before going, whispering, I'll come back. I didn't stop her, but I didn't wait either. Months passed. My small tailoring work turned into a proper setup. With Shazia's help we expanded, took more orders, hired a young girl who needed work. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. One evening Hera returned alone. I left him, she said. I looked at her, searching her face for hesitation. There was none. I realized something after that day, she continued. If I could stay silent while someone disrespected you, one day he would do the same to me. I nodded slowly. And I didn't want to become invisible too. She stayed with me that night. Like old times, we sat together, shared tea and talked, not as mother and child, but as two women who had learned in different ways the cost of silence. As for Armin, I never saw him again, but I heard enough to know my words had stayed with him. Sometimes the truth doesn't shout. It simply stands still and refuses to be ignored. Moral of the story: respect is not a favor given based on age, status, or convenience. It is a basic human right. Silence in the face of disrespect does not preserve peace, it slowly destroys dignity. Sometimes walking away is not weakness, it is the strongest reply you can give.